So thanks a million for the invitation. It's particularly nice as well, I suppose, that it's the first, something nice about a first of anything. And Oliver I came back to Vincent's in 1999, and Oliver was long established at that stage actually already, but we've been colleagues for 17 years and neither of us have changed a bit in that time. It's really good. So I've been given, oftentimes you're asked to give a talk and you get like 15 minutes or 20 minutes. I've been given longer than that, so I can cover quite a bit of ground, and I intend to cover quite a bit of ground that will cover the clinical and the research, and I hope will change your perception and the way you think about the clinical problem we all sit down with every day of the week, because 70% of our population are overweight or obese, and that is exaggerated then in the chronic disease population. So just have a think about this. Our intervention in Loughlinstown and in any weight management clinic that is running in line with international best practice is dietitian, physio, psychologist, monthly, one-on-one for a year to come up with a plan, implement a plan, and hopefully send the individual away with the life skills to be in control of their weight. So 230 kilo gentleman attends for a year. What is the weight loss target you're going to set that individual? So we'll start at the bottom. Hands up for over 50 kilos, between 40 and 50, between 30. No, this is over the 12 months, over the year. Yeah. So by the end of the year, you're a 230 kilo person. Do you want them to lose between 40 and 50 kilos? Hands up for 40 to 50? Few hands, okay. 30 to 40 kilos? Okay. 20 to 30 kilos? Okay. And 10 to 20 kilos? A small number of educated, empathetic people in the room. So yeah, that is the correct answer. The realistic weight loss target, intervening with a full multidisciplinary team, is 5 to 10%. And if you set a target greater than that, you are participating in the cycle of failure that the individual has endured throughout their attempts at weight loss.
10% is 23 kilos.
Well, 10% is 23 kilos, 5 to 10%. Okay, so if you want to make yourself feel better for putting your hand up for 20 to 30 kilos, then that's okay with me. And honestly, we would be looking more to the 10 than the 5. But let me just give you our most recent inpatient admission for the extreme end intervention, very low calorie diet, which is 1,100 kilocalories, liquid in the form of 2 litres of low fat milk, a multivitamin, iron, and an OXO cube or Bovril if they prefer a cup of Bovril. And they work with a physio, and it's a nutritionally complete diet. So her BMI was 53 with a weight of 167 kilos. 0.1 at the end of the first week, 167.1 kilos. At the end of the second week, 168.2 kilos. At the end of the third week, 169.1 kilos. Threatening to self-discharge. What are we about here? And then turned and lost 5 kilos, 5 kilos, and 5 kilos in the fourth, 5th, and 6th week of her stay. So, but we did not understand what was going on in the first week, and the second week, and the third week, and we couldn't explain it to her. We've seen this before, and it just serves to highlight how little we understand actually about the body's regulation of weight. We think we understand it, but we don't. And over time, you build up the kind of, I suppose, experience to say, well, this is the way it is. So we've had 2,200 patients through our MDT. 63% have lost weight. with the intervention we described, between 5 and 10%. 29% have remained weight stable, so within 2% of their starting weight. And 8% have put on weight, more than 2% of their starting body weight. So to me, I look at that and I say, right, there is a dynamic process. You insult a dynamic process, and most of the time, the expected thing happens. Some of the time, nothing happens. And then in a smaller percentage of cases, the opposite to what you would expect happens. And that just tells you it's a dynamic process. We're insulting it, and we're getting a predictable response to it. I was asked to talk to the European Small Animal Veterinary Association a few weeks ago in Malta, and this was my no disclosure slide. Just they're deeply troubled by obesity in pets. It also proves I'll talk to any group that I'm invited to speak to, so you don't have to feel particularly special this morning. Some of the work they're doing in the small animals was amazing to me. I mean, they're stenting dogs and small animals, multimodal treatment for breast cancer, degenerative joint disease in cats, mature indoor cats. This was my favourite by a mile. Prevalence of gait abnormalities in pugs, a questionnaire-based survey. The supervisor should have shaped that title better, I think. Maybe, it's great. So obesity is truly, it's a human problem, it's an animal problem. It's almost like global warming at an individual level when you look at the drivers of it. There's a few knowns about it. It tracks from childhood, we know that, 82%. Causes every disease and makes every disease it causes worse. There's very few things do that. Kills 1,000 people per million of our population per year in the developed world, so that's 55,000 people in the UK, it's 4,000 people in Ireland. Still relatively little in action. We are doing better treatment-wise. So in 2007, you would have had this slide showing 10% is what you can achieve, and that's all 90% of people can achieve. There are a small percentage of people who can do better than that, but effectively 10%. We now have a couple of medications emerging. We're beginning to use maybe the cognitive behavioural work better, so that you can begin to think about 15% if you incorporate pharmacotherapy appropriately. So that's positive. While population obesity has doubled in the last 30 years, the body mass index over 40 has gone up 600%. And the body mass index over 50 has gone up 1,200%. So that's an absolute explosion in the extreme end as we've grumbled towards a population doubling. We don't have the same data in extreme end obesity for kids, but Augustus Gloop in the Willy Wonka that I watched, and then Augustus Gloop in the Willy Wonka that this generation of kids watched, and you can see the shape, the acceptable face of kind of cinematic child overweight and obesity has changed. And my gang make me watch Modern Family, which is great, but you know, Manny is there, the kids in Desperate Housewives, and if it's there and represented, it becomes normalised. They seem happy enough, they're grand. And if it was purely a cosmetic issue, then it would be fine, but it's not. It's driving disease. And this is a huge problem. 3% of our best off, best educated 3-year-olds are obese, and 12% of our least well off, least educated are obese. And that's the bit that's the nettle that has to be grasped over the next 15 to 20 years, because we're growing a pool of chronic disease in the socioeconomic group that will not come forward for intervention until it is way too late. And that tells you that the environment, or it tells me that the environment is driving the problem. And these are the 198 different determinants of obesity as dictated by the kind of the UK Foresight report from about 10 years ago now. And that policymakers hate this slide. They look at it and go, oh, sure, what can you do about that? When you break them down, there are 7 major groupings of determinants. And the majority of those 7 major groupings are outside of the individual's control. They're the food environment, or the physical activity environment. There's societal drivers. You can't affect your genes. So if the vast majority, if 5 of the 7 are predominantly outside of your control, then obesity should spread within the environment, and that's what this study showed. Obesity spreads within the environment to 3 degrees of separation. So if a friend of yours becomes overweight or obese, in the next 5 years, your risk of becoming overweight or obese is increased by 70%. And if a friend of yours becomes overweight or obese, then your risk is increased by 38%. So 3 degrees of separation, and the conclusion of this study was a valid weight loss strategy would be to change to thin friends, based on sound scientific evidence. So we're living longer than ever in the food industry like this. They say, we've never been healthier. We're living forever. But we're actually living forever with more years of chronic disease than ever before. And on average, obesity delivers 14 years of a chronic illness before you die. This guy, Mr. Timmerman, forced FINA, the International Swimming Organization, to introduce a new category of world record about 3 years ago now, the 105 to 109-year-old category. And he started swimming when he was 80, when he had to stop the hiking and hill walking. So you can do it positively, and his recipe for doing it positively was GEDS, GEDS, genes, exercise, diet, spirit. So you have to mind all of those, and you have a chance. And apparently there was a very angry 103-year-old in Bristol
control back
who was the
of
holder
your life.
in that oldest category, and he had to wait 2 years to have another pop, and that's a long time.
Self-management for me is the most important thing about living with arthritis. I'm living with it 24 hours, 7 days a week.
Coca-Cola say we no longer promote in any way, shape or form to under 12s
I'm the one that has to do it day in, day out.
And choose the top baby names from 2007 for their most successful
At
advertising
Arthritis
campaign,
Ireland, we have 3 types of self-management courses on offer. Firstly, we have Living Well with Arthritis, a 6-week community-based programme available in locations all around the country. Secondly, we have Breaking the Pain Cycle, which is a half-day workshop, again delivered in the community and available all around Ireland. Thirdly, we have Living Well with Arthritis Online, an online education programme which you can complete in the comfort of your own home over a number of hours. Here is what some people have to say about our courses.
There are dental effects, and the dentists are driven absolutely. I mean, they're the most agitated group I meet around sugar-sweet
all of the things that I wasn't told in a doctor's surgery, I was told in the self-management course. And they're the things that help me every day.
Practically, it helped me by learning pain management techniques like distraction and meditation, things that I'd never heard of.
It taught me how to set a goal each week, like modest goals, and to keep
adolescent and
I found that there were other people with the condition, so I didn't feel so alone.
I realised how important it is to carry on and do as much as possible, and how that can actually improve my symptoms and make me feel better.
You got to meet people in similar situations to yourself.
I think the big thing I learned from was to be active.
I had a better knowledge of my disease,
coaching sessions,
and I had a better knowledge of how to help myself.
If you're thinking of doing the course, the first thing I'd say is do it. It makes such a massive difference to the whole outlook on living with arthritis.
I would recommend the course to other people, definitely, who have any form of arthritis or fibromyalgia, because
nudge architecture.
I don't know, to me, it just opened up a new life for me.
Any younger person was looking to do a course like that, I'd highly recommend it.
I had very bad thoughts,
about how my life was going to turn out in the course, like, to be honest,
Brussels sprouts, well, no
For more
kid
information on all our self-management courses,
so
log on to arthritisireland.ie, or you can call our helpline on 1890 252 846.
My brother is the Italian rugby manager, and if I get depressed about looking after obesity, I just give him a buzz. Actually, it's not an easy job. So when he was with Harlequins, a professional rugby club in England at the time, they were sponsored by Powerade, and Conor was drinking Powerade up in the stand. Try scored, Sky cameras go, he's having a slug of Powerade, and I said, Conor, you're going to have to stop doing that, please. I'm giving talks saying they're bad. We look alike, so we're associated, so just switch to water. So he switched to water. The following Monday, after the first game of water, phone call from Powerade to the club. Conor was drinking water at the weekend. We're the sponsors. Conor explained why, and they said, oh, that's absolutely fine, Conor, you can drink water, just put it in a Powerade bottle. And that's what they need normalising the behaviour of, we all think that's what you need, and thankfully that got Conor a little bit angry, so he went to water out of water bottles and got the other managers in the English Premiership to switch to water out of water bottles. A little win. This is another example, in my view, of product placement and the wrong message. If you take a tour of the new National Children's Hospital virtual tour, Ronald McDonald is once again sponsoring the children's wing, 53 rooms for parents when their kids are sick. Absolutely vital facility. Absolutely incredible work, but absolutely the wrong message that Ronald McDonald is positioned right beside our new National Children's Hospital, the most expensive healthcare facility in the world, and we're allowing McDonald's to be right beside it. So, and it's the only name that appears on the virtual tour of the facility. So it's product placement at its best. And it's just the wrong message when we're in the middle of an obesity epidemic. You put a win on a product, then people are twice as likely to buy it if they buy a lotto ticket now and again, or if they like a flutter. So there's biology behind the advertising. Doritos Roulette. Who here has heard of Doritos Roulette? Small number. Who has not heard of it? Vast majority of you. Okay. If you know any 10 or 11-year-olds, go home and ask them about Doritos Roulette, because it's beautifully marketed to that age group. So 1 in 10 of these chips is hot chili, and the other are tangy cheese or the normal flavours. So you go basically toe-to-toe with the person you're playing the game with, and to see who gets the hot chili. And when you're 10, hot chili is like a bullet to the head. It's a disaster. You're sent running to the water font. So it really well marketed, and I give talks in schools occasionally. You ask the first years who's played Doritos Roulette, 120 out of 120 hands go up, and the teachers are down the back going, "What is Doritos? What's that about?" And how do I know about it? Because my 12-year-old was going toe-to-toe with a 12-year-old across the road when I came home, and it was explained to me. So I confiscated them and made a slide. And we have very simple brains. Dopamine is your reward hormone. It is absolutely, we would not have evolved, we would not have survived if we didn't crave energy to get us through to the next day. And then you had to store energy. And we developed a really good system for storing energy, and that's fat. And fat is a really important part of your body for storing energy. It's your reserve. It's why we survive. And so it's really important. But we've never had a period of excess like we have at the moment. This is a schoolyard in Finland. I was there with Operation Transformation a couple of years ago. They do public health really well. They all cycle to school, the kids. You ask the kind of student year head, well, what do you do in the middle of winter, minus 18 degrees and 2 foot of snow? And he says, oh yeah, you couldn't get a lift, then you'd have to cycle. Try that in Dublin. And this is Cabinteely Community School a week later. Same time, reasonable cycle paths, but we don't have enough appropriate infrastructure. And that's an example of an Irish cycle lane. And you know, the problem with that is that they had to come out, they had a plan, and then they came out to deliver the plan, and then they went ahead and did something like that. Somebody should have called, you know, this is silly. And then we're never offline, and that is an issue, I think, and I don't know where it's going to finish in terms of sleep hygiene for kids, in terms of just constant contact, but it's a big issue. So I'm going to move into a bit of our research and talk about fat. This was a plane that brought me to Glasgow when I was presenting it, the research a couple of months ago. And I'm just going to show you a video of fat behaving itself. This is good fat. Give it a second. There you are, you just had to walk down. Special powers. I might try and play it again, but this is your lipid-filled kind of adipocyte. Your triglyceride is in the middle of that. And that is 3 fatty acid chains, and will give you 336 molecules of ATP. Glucose gives you 36 molecules of ATP. So you have an energy-rich store. It's a little tricky to mobilize, and you mobilize it by these cells in fat in the stromovascular fraction. This is an iNKT cell, an invariant natural killer T cell sitting up against the wall of the adipocyte. It's a really important cell in every part of the body it's in, actually. These are other innate T cells, macrophages, and maybe mate cells, and you can see them chatting. So sometimes the green cells actually hit the iNKT cell, sometimes they just pass by, but they are chatting. Sometimes they're shaking hands, but they're telling fat, store energy if it's postprandial, and if it's you're fasting, we need to mobilize, and we need to mobilize gently. So like any other organ in the body, fat has a kind of relaxation, contraction phase, a systole or a diastole. And that shouldn't surprise us. And just play that one more time. You can see touching there and then just passing by, but sending messages. So I'm going to show you now fat after a high fat diet and what happens to your fat. So it'll probably play in a second. May have to do it twice. There you are. So you've got stromovascular fraction, the blood vessel's absolutely squeezed. You've got your boss, your iNKT cell up here, and you've got your mate or your macrophage that's not going to get up there to give a message. So you can't tell people with this kind of fat to eat less, move more, and you will lose weight in a linear fashion. That doesn't happen. It's almost like the engine is blown. Their fat is broken. It's hypoxic. It's miserable, and you've got to somehow restore fat function, but certainly take it into account when you're sitting with the patient and say, look, we know it's tough. Your targets have to be reasonable. Losing 5 to 10% of your starting body weight is magnificent for your health, for your blood pressure, for your physical function. It may not be what you want, and you may need to lose more, but it's really beneficial. So We are doing work in Crumlin with obese kids and Declan Cody, 12-year-olds weighing 90 kilos. That's a problem. You can imagine their gait, you can imagine their, compared to the lean controls. The blood sugar is fine, it's not a problem, but when you look at the insulin that they're maintaining to control this blood sugar, as a diabetologist, you're looking at that going, well, how long is that beta cell going to hang in there? It's a real problem. In the kids, we've looked at the gene expression for diabetes and heart disease. You can do that now by looking at microRNA that are linked to diabetes and heart disease. Our obese kids as young as the age of 5 are turning on their genes for diabetes and heart disease compared to lean kids. What that effectively is saying is that the predictions in the States that we'll have 30% of our population type 2 by 2050, that's underway at an epigenetic level by the age of 5, 6 or 7 in the setting of childhood obesity. Similar, the cancer defense is switched off. So these are the genes that defend against cancer in obese kids compared to lean, and the bigger you are, the more turned off your genes are. So the doubling of new cancer by 2030 underway at an epigenetic level. So I talked to you about the iNKT cell and the immune system within fat, running fat. About 10 years ago we started to just look at the immune system because obesity was causing everything and making everything it caused worse. So we started taking 10 mils of blood and just looking at the immunophenotype. And the immunologist Lydia Lynch, working with us at the time, was explaining to me that in 1 tablespoon of blood you have 20 million in inverted commas white cells divided into functional subtypes based on their surface markers and size. And she would show me representative dot plots and say, and tell me what they were. And I used kind of glaze over with these until I was away in Rome and I saw that. So, what is that? Pardon me? Starlings, yeah. So I said birds. My other half said starlings. And I said, how do you know? And she said, surface markers and size. Not what she said. Feathers and small. And I thought, it makes a big difference in an ecosystem if you lose starlings compared to bald eagles, compared to another group of birds. So you can't call them birds. You can't call them white cells. It makes a difference what you're losing. And the reason it makes a difference is that in obesity we are losing specific cell subtypes. And the only 2 I'm going to mention to you today are this guy, the iNKT cell, which was that little white cell up against the wall of the adipocyte, and then this fella, the natural killer cell, which is our jobbing and much more common cancer killer. So the iNKT cell, it's been described as the Swiss Army knife of the immune system. It's a really important cell. It can do anything. It can calm, inflame, kill, but it seems to be much better left in a regulatory role in whatever tissue is found. It has a role in cancer, in psoriasis, in asthma, and at the time we were working with Brian Kirby around the psoriasis aspect, and there was a lot of discussion around this psoriasis and the psoriatic arthropathy. And what we found was that our obese patients were losing their iNKT cells compared to lean. So there's your representative dot plot from a lean subject, and you can see our obese subjects in the circulation are losing their iNKT cells. So Lydia Lynch went to Harvard and worked with a mouse model where you got rid of the iNKT cells and fed them a high-fat diet, and we were kind of looking for more of the complications of obesity. So is this why patients are getting more of everything? And when she came back after about 3 months into the study, she was on the phone going, it's not that they're getting more of the complications of obesity, they are getting even more obese. So no self-respecting mouse should have any fat. So this is a wild type, fed a high-fat diet, 10 grams fat. Get rid of the iNKT cells, and despite the same food intake, double the fat. Give them back iNKT cells, inject them into the peritoneum of the mouse. It's called adoptive transfer, and in the next 4 days you get a reduction in fat mass, an improvement in sugar, but the adipocyte size, the fat cell size, goes from the big puffed kind of full adipocyte back down to normal over 4 days. And Lydia showed that this was dependent on 2 of these cytokines, IL-10 and IL-4. So we'd gone into the study saying weight is affecting the immune system, and come out of it going, oh, and the immune system actually is feeding back and affecting weight, so it's a cycle. And again, shouldn't really have been surprised, because most things in the body are a cycle. And if as you get bigger as a population or as a person, you are turning off a cell type that is in turn making you put on more weight, then the explosion in the extreme end, as we've grumbled to population doubling, you can begin to potentially explain. Natural killer cells are, as I said, are jobbing cancer killers, are jobbing virus killers, and we've all killed cancer cells, I would say, since we've come into the room. We've all probably killed off a virus or 2 since we came into the room. It's our natural killer cell does that. What are we seeing? Our obese kids are losing their NK population compared to lean subjects. If you ask them to do their job, which is respond, in the lean situation they respond. Even this is a bit of a response. In obesity, they respond some of the time in kids, but some of the time they just disappear and don't respond at all. So the next slide shows the results of RNA sequencing that we did, and Andy Hogan is the scientist who's led this work, and he extracted RNA from NK cells in obese kids compared to lean, and we sent it off again to Boston, and we got a very attractive picture back called a volcano plot. That's what comes back, but effectively it tells you what genes are turned on and what genes are turned off. And the bioinformatician told us your obese subjects are turning on all their genes for handling fat in NK cells. Now NK cells run on glucose. It's the most efficient energy for them. So what were they doing turning on fat genes? This is what they were doing. They were trying to handle fat. So if you think about the 20 million white cells in your tablespoon of blood, you can now actually just take a photograph of one of them. I mean, it is amazing what you can do now. So you're meant to have lipid in your membrane. That's the green stuff in the membrane, and maybe a trace of it in intracellular membranes. This is your obese NK cell with lots of lipid inside. And this is an NK cell doing its job, right? So the NK cell locks on to the tumor cell, forms what's called an immunological synapse, moves this little red dot, if you can see it there, I don't know if it shows, but the red dot there moves to the point of the immunological synapse and empties, it degranulates into the tumor cell and hopes to kill it. In obesity, you've got your immunological synapse, so the NK is locking on, immunological synapse, but the ammunition is down the back, can't get to the point of contact. They still degranulate, but they're firing blanks, effectively. Is it cause and effect? Again, the reviewers wanted to know that. So this is a tumor cell, the NK locking on, the ammunition at the point of contact, but if you add a lipid, the ammunition goes down the back. So it is cause and effect. So lipid in your cells, your NK cells, is just a spanner in the works. So it's a little bit like the cells in the body are like their owner. If they're lipid filled and inactive, then that's how every cell in the body is behaving. So just in the last couple of minutes, I want to show you a little bit about nutrition. We'll move away from science and back to nutrition. Hands up here who has seen the new Irish food pyramid. Okay, and hands up who has not. Okay, good. Good, because I'm going to show it. Well, ideally, we'd all have seen the new Irish food pyramid. So this is the old Irish food pyramid. You know, rice, grain, pasta, bread on the bottom. We've known for some time we wanted the fruit and veg and salad to come down, but we were waiting for the new pyramid. A few years ago, I wanted them in the interim to make the bottom shelf the same size as the fruit and veg and salad. That was agreed at a Department of Health meeting, and then towards the end of the meeting, one of the officials said, "Oh God, no, we can't do that." And I said, "Why can you not do that? It would be a good message." He said, "Well, it wouldn't be a pyramid." So we couldn't do that. Before I show you the new pyramid, I'll just show you a couple of international examples of where changes are going, because I think they're interesting. The Swiss have put fluids on the bottom, fruit and veg and salad, then the rice and grain and pasta. There's carbohydrate in pretty much every shelf in the food pyramid, bar the oils. So people say I'm on a no carb or a low carb. They're talking about that because they don't consider the fruit and veg and salad and the carbs they get from other sources. So I think it is important we know that. The German one, three-dimensional, multimodal, way too complicated. We will move on. The French, as usual, a bit of flair, food stairs, family together, fluids on top, fruit and veg and salad. So again, you can see the rice grain pasta becoming less prominent in your diet, still an important part of your diet for your slow release, kind of feeling fuller longer kind of thing. And there's a big debate about whether there should be a top shelf at all, because 85% of food advertising is spent on the top shelf, 85% of celebrity endorsement is on the top shelf, and by having it there, we keep talking about it. We might be better. The Greeks are still on low budget food pyramid from austerity. They have included a little wine on the side. Yes. And then the food plate I had hoped we'd go to, because the UK and the US have gone with the food plate. It's a good visual, it's an easy visual. Half of everything you eat should be fruit and veg and salad. Protein, doesn't matter where you get it from, chicken, egg, the source is unimportant. Rice and grain and pasta is important, but not dominant. And then dairy, I think, is very important. And you don't have to worry about fat, because fat will get into the diet through the protein, through the dairy. You'll get enough fat in your diet. And just one more before, if you can hold your excitement, for those of you who haven't seen the new Irish food pyramid. The Japanese one is interesting, I think, just because, for two reasons. Well, the spinning top is a really popular toy in Japan, so kids get it at Christmas and they want the kids to relate to the pyramid, or their tool. So that denotes physical activity. Fluids on top. You will never get the Japanese to remove rice from their most important staple. What they've done more clearly than other countries is put distance between veg and salad and fruit. And I would certainly make an effort to get to my 5 a day, but I would be more favouring fruit in that 5 a day, and the veg and salad I might be 3-2 fruit to veg and salad, and what this is kind of saying on balance, we maybe should be getting more from our veg and salad than our fruit. And I'm not yet ready to become the person who peels carrots before he goes to work. But I worked with someone like that. I don't want to become that person, but maybe I should. So this is the new Irish food pyramid. It's not a plate because of the resources. We didn't have, in the Department of Health, the resources to support a plate. And it's short term, it's a pity, but anyway, this is an improvement. We have fruit and veg and salad at the bottom, advice on water, the servings a day tailored to age, from the age of 5 up. We don't have nutrition guidelines for 5 and under yet. And then there's a much debated gap here in the pyramid, so it's a broken pyramid, but they're not calling it a broken pyramid, to the top shelf. We still need to keep plenty of fruit and veg and salad in our diet. There will be cereals, or breads, pasta and rice. Plenty of colour will give you your vitamins and minerals, and these are all naturally low in fat, so if you keep the sauces low in fat, then you'll be healthy. Tiny bit on physical activity, and it's just this study. It's Jerry Morris' study from 1953. 31,000 London bus workers, half of them conductors, half of them drivers, and he wanted to know what's the difference between sitting all day and standing all day, because the conductors were not doing exercise, they were standing and walking at a really slow pace. And like beautifully matched age, ethnicity, income, smoking status, just magnificent. Drivers 3 times more likely to have a heart attack, and then I think it's interesting, 3 times more likely to die in the first 3 days after the heart attack. Because I would have thought if a conductor got a heart attack and he was less likely to get one in the first place, that he might be more likely to die in the first few days after, because he had selected himself out as an unlucky person to get a heart attack. But no, I mean, so really impressive data. And it's really not data about physical activity, it's data about physical inactivity and sitting versus standing. And we would advise all the patients who come to our clinic, they come really enthusiastic, they say, and we're going to join the gym. And we say, no, please don't join a gym. Because for this year we need you to build into your life activity, and if you want to bolt on a gym as a pleasure bit or as an additional, that's fine, but we've got to find ways in your day-to-day activity, because the most you ever get to gym is 3 days a week on a good week, and the rest of the time you're beating yourself up about not getting to the gym. And how much? Needs to be at least an hour of moderate to vigorous, with a mixture of the walking and cycling with your press-ups or your moderate weights. And this is a slide given to me by an exercise physiologist from the States, and it's Oklahoma Zoo sign when you go in, and it's tips for how to use the walking trails. Bend your arms, push off with your feet, walk heel to toe. So it's an actual description of how to walk when you arrive at Oklahoma Zoo, so you can enjoy the walking trail. So in America now you have to be able to read before you can walk. So childhood obesity is a huge health challenge. The immune system is defending weight loss. Get rid of sugary drinks and watch portion size. Be active for an hour at least, and sleep for 6 to 8 anyway, for adults, and be careful about what's in the cupboard. Thank you very much.